3. Okay, we're live. So welcome to the Help Us Show, where you can get ideas to help you grow your eco-conscious business. And I'm very excited today to be joined by Elizabeth Marsh from Golden Leaf of London, talking about green urban spaces for more sustainable communities. So welcome, Elizabeth. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be here.
So the Golden Leaf of London is a living art project with multiple outcomes around education, regeneration, biodiversity, well-being, and more. So straight into the questions. What gave you the idea to set up Golden Leaf of London? And can you just give us a quick overview of what it's all about?
Sure. It was basically my lockdown baby. Being a floral designer by profession, obviously I'm very attached to nature and I care very deeply about it. I was really struck during lockdown about, first of all, the re-engagement with nature by a lot of people who suddenly found themselves forced to be outdoors in the parks. And we kind of fell in love with nature again. I was also really struck by the furlough scheme and the way we had inverted our value systems, so that for the first time that I can remember, logistical values were serving humanistic ones. And I just felt I had to put a stake in the sand. And I'm not saying that I can change the world, but I thought, do you know what? What I can do is ask the question and force people to make a choice about, do we drift back to what we were doing before because we haven't thought to do anything different? Or do we actually say, come on, we've done it this once, let's carry on doing it. Let's carry on putting those humanistic values first. So that was really at the heart of it. And so I asked the question, what if we were to create a ribbon of vegetation to run across London so animals could cross the city without crossing a main road? And the idea was to get people to think.
Oh, just timed out there a little bit.
Hi, sorry. I think my internet's playing up again. It's typical.
That's okay. You were saying sort of the ribbon of vegetation across London.
Yes, so really to get people to think. And so the idea was to ask people, what if we were to create a ribbon of vegetation to run across London so animals could cross the city without crossing a main road? And it was deliberately meant to be a little bit provocative because that's what makes people stop and think. And to say, is it a preposterous idea? Or actually, is it important that we embrace humanistic values again?
I love that. So that's where the whole idea came from. So can you the project's obviously got multiple impacts and benefits for London, and also you mentioned potentially further afield. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So obviously its main focus is as a living art project with a view to integrating nature into our urban design. And this is really at the heart of the project. It's not about tokenism. There's a lot of tokenism in terms of nature in our urban settings, but actually that doesn't really change things in any kind of dramatic way. So for example, physical and mental health and well-being. If there's nature present, psychologists have done a lot of studies about the impact of nature on the human psyche. And it has hugely beneficial results, even if we're not aware of it. In terms of the SUDs, so the draining away the floodwater, if plants are planted into the ground rather than in tubs, they will stop the flooding that's been increasingly prevalent in our cities in recent years. It's also a way of joining the natural spaces across London. At the moment, those spaces, we are rich in natural spaces, but they do tend to be siloed. They're kind of individual spaces. You make a trip to one, you experience it, and then you kind of go home again. Well, what if they were all connected? So the idea of the golden leaf is to use the leaf structure. So you have a central pathway, if you like, across central London using the A4, which runs straight through the centre of London, splits it in half. If you were to plant alongside that road, you would create an avenue effect, which for the first time might unite London into a sense of one community. At the moment, we don't have one London community. So there's an immediate benefit there. but also that central root could then connect all the side roots. If you think of the structure of a leaf, those little veins that run off the central spine, so that all of the natural spaces could be connected by roads that qualified for the Golden Leaf accreditation, which would be that there's a ribbon of vegetation, whether that's trees, whether it's gardens that are planted rather than paved, whether it's hanging baskets. There's lots of ways you can create a ribbon of vegetation. And then we'd create a unique tourism attraction, because it's a unique way to explore a city on foot, using the sort of natural pathways and really learning about regeneration, biodiversity, and what good husbandry of the planet really looks like, so that our future generations have much more knowledge than us. I think our generation is very ignorant about what we actually should be doing in order to look after the planet. There's lots of theories about it, but there's not a huge amount of knowledge in the general population. So it's about using education to really get the message out there, so people understand the difference between something that's good for the planet and something that's not. And I think currently there's a lot of confusion about that.
Definitely. I so love the idea of that golden leaf, and it paints a visual picture as well, doesn't it? So people can sort of really understand how that might work and on a bigger scale. I love that. What have you found have been the sort of the challenges and successes that you faced in setting this up? You know, maybe this is something that other people who are thinking of similar ideas, or people in business, can kind of take that and apply it to their business, perhaps.
So I think both the strength and the weakness of the foundation is the diversity of the people involved. I initially started talking about it and was almost kind of holding my breath, waiting for people to laugh at me. And to my surprise, they not only didn't laugh, they really loved the idea. So we have a variety of followers. I was saying to you earlier that we have our Facebook following, our Instagram following, our LinkedIn following. We have our newsletter following, and they're all slightly different, with between 1 and 200 in each of those groups. So the challenge really is, how do you bring such diverse people together? How do you manage the conflicts that are naturally going to arise from people from very different backgrounds? And this project touches on so many different areas. So some people are totally passionate about the education. Others are really passionate about biodiversity. Yet others are completely focused on community and the impact it will have on that. So how do you manage those different drives, the different expectations, the different demands? So the community people are like, well, why are you talking about biodiversity? Clearly you need to talk about community, and vice versa. So I think it's managing the communications is probably the biggest challenge, especially for a startup charity where we don't have funds. We need to generate those funds. So there's an element of a catch-22. How do you get people to believe in you and trust you when you don't have the money to pay for sophisticated marketing techniques? So I'd say that those have sort of been the hardest things for us so far. I don't think there is one answer to it, but certainly what we've done is, talking about it, engaging through things like using Google Drive, which is great because we can put everyone onto one place. They can get access to information, so they can start to educate themselves. Zoom has been great because we've been able to have Zoom calls, so people from all over the world have been calling in on those. And these are great ways to sort of generate the initial energy to get the thing rolling. But I think sort of viral marketing campaigns are definitely the way forward for this kind of initiative, because they're where you use social media to drive up the demand, which then gives you a platform to sort of launch your fundraising from. So I'd say that's probably both our strengths and our weaknesses in one go, really.
That's brilliant. I think that's just given people some really good tips, and obviously they can find out more. I'll give them details. So lastly, what would you say is your top eco tip? And this can be personal or something in business that you think might help.
I think the top eco tip is to stop thinking that it's everyone else's problem. I think there's a tendency to say, yes, I'm absolutely for sustainability, but I can't give up this and I can't stop doing that and I have to drive everywhere. Actually, we don't have to do anything. And I think that until we really take on board the fact that we ourselves are going to have to change the way we live and think, sustainability is always going to be on the back bench. It's never going to kind of make it through to the mainstream. And one of the aims of this foundation is to drive, or to help drive, sustainability into the mainstream, because that's the only way we're going to save the planet and have it, fit for habitation in the future.
Fantastic. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and so many great insights and tips. I know we've got a couple of people watching live who've got questions, and so I just want to say, if anyone is watching it live who's catching up on the replay, we do keep this really short. So what we do is come back to you afterwards and answer any comments and questions. So do keep them coming, and both Elizabeth and I will get onto that and respond to you. So you can find Golden Leaf of London at goldenleafoflondon.org. And thank you so much for joining us, Elizabeth. Such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. And see you viewers same time next week for another show. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye-bye.